Good morning. Thank you for coming. Kiana Rose Russell, 25 years old, of Kennewick, Washington, passed away on September 19, 2022, after a long battle with pulmonary fibrosis. Kiana was born on April 17, 1997, to Larry and Renee Russell in Richland, Washington. After graduating from Carmichael High School in 2015, Kiana studied nursing for a time before deciding on a career as an in-home health care aide. Kiana made her choice to serve God in 2011. Her beautiful spirit touched many lives. Even though she battled with cancer and poor health her entire life, she was always kept a smile on her face and a spirit of love in her heart. Her humility and tenderness shined God's light into all the lives around her. In her free time, Kiana enjoyed spending quality time with her family and friends, traveling, journaling, attending church conventions, and most importantly, spending time with her Heavenly Father. Kiana is survived by her parents, Larry and Renee Russell, her sister, Jelena Vandenberg, her brothers, Keaton Russell and Jalen Russell, her grandparents, Sharon and David Lynch, and Sharon Russell, her cousins, aunts, and uncles, and her many friends. Let's bow in a word of prayer. Father, we're aware today that you're interested in this gathering. We're aware that you're interested in our hearts. We're also aware of your work in the heart of Kiana, and we're thankful. We plead for help today as we are aware that there is a part that is not here, that help us to lift our eyes to what she has left behind for us. We're thankful for the testimony of your work, and we plead that we keep focused on that. We're thankful for, even though that there is mourning, we do know and we have experienced comfort, and we're thankful for the comfort that's come. And so help us, we plead as the living to continue just to seek what is from above, to seek what you would like for our lives, to also be willing to let go of things that are hindering that. And we ask for that, please, in Jesus' name. Amen. In talking with the family and my own experience with Kiana, I don't know of anybody more positive, really. And maybe we could say, for Kiana, she had lots of reasons to be negative, but she chose to be positive. And it's not to say that Kiana just had a bunch of negatives in her life. She had some wonderful positives. And those are the things that helped her with all the difficult experiences that came. And that's what's going to help us too, with all the difficult experiences that are going to come in our life. How to be positive. Thinking of another young lady, and we read about her in 2 Kings 5. And there's a lot of negatives for this young lady, lots of negatives. To be a young girl and to be taken captive by somebody who's not your family. And it says that the Syrians came and they came in, they took a lot of captives, but one of them was this young girl. And so now she is serving among the enemy, you could say. Lots of reasons to be negative. But like Kiana, she found a way to be positive. And being positive had far-reaching effect, influence for her. And so we'll just look at a little bit of this young lady. It says that in the second verse of 2 Kings 5, and the Syrians had gone out by companies and brought away captive, had brought away captive out of the land Israel, Israel, a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And so Naaman was a high up in the military, and which she probably would have maybe felt at one point was a little bit a negative to have to be serving the very one of the very ones that was responsible for her being in captivity. But she found a way to be positive, and says that she just waited on Naaman's wife. She was a help to Naaman's wife, but she just had a little something to say. That's all, just a little something to say. And she said unto her mistress, I would, because Naaman had a skin disease, leprosy. But it says of this is what she had to say to her, Naaman's wife. Would to God that my Lord were with the prophet in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. And she wanted to be a help. And in a situation here, you get focused on all the negatives, and there's always negatives around us. And we get focused on them, and what's it do? It just takes us down. But finding a way to focus on what's positive, lifting our eyes to what God extends, and that's really what is positive. When our health doesn't work like it should, and Kiana experienced that, she was still lifting her eyes to something that was spiritual and from God that had been given to her, a hope of living without pain, without tears. And we're thankful. Today, even though there's a loss, there is a realization of that hope. There's a comfort that comes because of that hope. And that's what she lived for. It wasn't just something that she said, but it's where she was. The only really places that I knew Kiana, I never had a chance of staying in their home. But where did I meet her? At about every convention possible, on the front row. Sometimes with her legs tucked up underneath her, and we always look forward to her testimony, what she had to share with us at convention too. And I know she was looking forward to what she heard, but we always looked forward to what she had to share. Positive, thankful. We're thankful for her influence, her testimony among us. And that influence doesn't just disappear. And that testimony will not disappear. It wasn't about Kiana, but it was about what God was doing in her, and she was thankful for that. And that's what gave her hope. That's what gave her, she just, in one of her little journals that she wrote, she said, all the things that she could do, places that she could go. One of the things she said, well, I probably would like to go to some conventions. And, she went to a lot of conventions, and we loved seeing her there. We loved hearing what she had to share. And so this little mistress, here she is, she's helping out with the enemy, lots of negatives, lots of difficult experiences. And yet, obviously, God was helping her to have victory over all of the negatives. And that's the key for us too, is God needs to be the one that helps us to get victory over the negatives. We on our own strength, probably we're not going to be able to do it. But God needs to help us get victory over the negatives. And when we do, what we actually have to, we have something to share. And Kiana had something, she shared it with us too. She shared it freely by the way that she lived, by those that she served, the homes of those that she cared for. She was in, you know her spirit, you know her attitude, just like this little maid. Her spirit was a wonderful bonus, a positive, a light, like we read in the obituary. It's a light. It was seen. It wasn't so much the amount of words that she said, but it's the way that she lived and how she lived it. And God giving her victory over all of the negatives so that there could be a positive influence, and there is. And it's a wonderful testimony of that here today is the positive influence of Kiana's life. And so this little maid, she just said, I just wish that you understood the same power that I understand. And it's not explaining the doctrine of what she believed. It wasn't going in all that. I just wish you understood the power of what I understand.
and I know where it is, and I wish you could get there. And guess what? A somewhat proud man had enough humility to actually follow up on what this captive slave had said, because of her spirit. It changed him. And then he went and he eventually meets up with the messages to Elisha, and he thought, well, surely this should be a better performance than this. Maybe the rivers where I came from are better than this river, because he was asked just to go and wash 7 times in a river. And it wasn't a river that he thought was very good. He said, surely there's cleaner and nicer rivers where I come from. And yet, his servants were able to speak to him again. It wasn't the little maid that was there with him, I'm pretty sure. But his servants said, if he'd asked you to do some great thing, would you have done it? Well, probably. But he just asked you to do something small. And so he humbled himself, and he went. And that was all because someone who was surrounded by negatives got victory from God, power from God. And that power wasn't just for herself. She wanted to share it. And that's the beauty of what God's work is. It's not just about ourselves. Yes, it affects ourselves first, obviously. But what does it do? It has an influence that will help others also. And we're thankful for Kiana's experience. We know that it's hard to see the young one go. It's hard. There's just so much of life that maybe they're missing out on. But the reality is, they've entered into the very thing. And maybe there's some ways I'm a little jealous to think that here she lived right, had power in her life. There was evidence of God's work, and she finished. She finished. Can't change it. Can't reverse the testimony. It's done and sealed. And we're thankful for seeing God's work in Kiana. And we're thankful for the influence of her positive life on our lives as well. In your folder there's a hymn 287, In Jesus' Hands. And that will follow the lead of Kiana, 287.
Will be today, as you thought about coming here, I wonder if you had any thought, any desire of being touched by the eternal, God. It's been on my thoughts. So sometimes I've said in the past, like you hear a certain person and they make a certain request for their funeral, and no, that's fine. I don't plan on attending my funeral. Kiana's body is here, but Kiana had it very clear, and somewhere in one of her journals, she just expressed that very clearly, that she wasn't a soul. Let me see. Anyway, I'll just have to say it my own words. Kiana was aware that she was an eternal soul in an earthly body for a little bit, and so the least important part is here with us. And so we're not here for Kiana really today. We did what we could for her. We loved her while we had her with us, and she did more for us than we ever did for her. I think we'd all feel that way. But one reason we're here today is because there is an eternal God in heaven who wants to make impressions on our lives. And there were times when God used Kiana to make impressions on my heart. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that we have that opportunity again. So there's a verse came to mind, and it's Deuteronomy chapter 6, 2 verses actually. Verse 4, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. Now, that's a tall order, to love God with your all. I don't feel I've ever lived that out to perfection. I don't think any of us would say that. But one thing, like, if that is real in our life, there's not going to be any doubt what we love the most. And so there's not going to be any doubt that we love God if we're trying to live that verse out. So is there anyone here that wonders if Kiana loved her Lord, loved her God, loved her Savior? I don't think so. And I thought that was clear. It's very, very clear. And it wasn't always easy. It wasn't ever automatic. I don't know if I've ever had so much reading material speaking at a funeral, but I have her journals here. I'm not going to read a lot out of them, but they just touched and inspired. And one thing that made it that's very clear as you read some of these things she wrote, it was never automatic. It was never easy. That inspiration, that beauty that we saw in her, it came at a cost, and it came through desperation sometimes, and praying and humbling herself, and getting back in touch with the God of heaven. She didn't always have an eternal perspective. Sometimes she had a very, very natural, very, very earthly perspective, and she wasn't always positive, but she got back to being positive. And so some other verses, and after Jesus had been crucified and he raised again, and in the last part of John's gospel, and he meets with some of his apostles, and he has this little visit with Peter, the others there watching, And Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me more than these? He said unto him, Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. He said unto him, Feed my lambs. And then again, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. So someone asked me a while back, like Peter here, he was one of the first 12 apostles, and he was very clearly, very plainly called to dedicate his whole life for the rest of his life to the ministry of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and to spend his life proclaiming this gospel. And as a minister of the gospel, Jesus gave him a commission, you'd say, feed my lambs and feed my sheep. But I was talking with someone a while back, and they read this verse, and they have a life and a job and a family and a home, and they've got lots going on in life. And they just asked me, like Peter, he was dedicated to the ministry, and Jesus told him, feed my lambs and feed my sheep. This person, they just asked me, how can I apply that to my life? How can I feed God's people? And we were visiting someone yesterday, and I think it was Facebook. I don't use Facebook, but apparently Kiana did, so I never saw anything she wrote on Facebook. But they just said they loved checking in with her posts because they were always inspiring. They were always positive. And so Kiana was feeding people. Kiana fed us with her. She didn't feed us with her struggles. She confided in me a couple times the struggles, but she fed us with the victories, the victories that she got. But there was a deep. I think probably most of us, probably all of us here, we could say we've been fed by Kiana, by her attitude, by her spirit. She wrote a couple letters not long before she went into the hospital. She wrote one letter to her friend Hilda, and Hilda sent us that letter. And there's just a couple things I wanted to share from that. Not much. Just kind of some excerpts. Kiana wrote, thanks for keeping in touch and being a friend. And she was a dear friend. Hilda was a dear friend to Kiana, confidant. And Kiana says, I've been updating everyone online, but I can't forget about you, double underline. And I'm pretty sure Hilda doesn't have Facebook. She doesn't keep up online. But Kiana was just thinking of this elderly servant of God, and she didn't want her left out. And so she wrote her this letter, and there's some beautiful things. Told her a little bit about her cancer, and typical Kiana, we kind of got a chuckle and a smile out of this morning. 5 weeks of proton therapy radiation. Kiana says, that went very well. All I got was a sunburn. And she goes on with some more news. And then she just shared some thoughts. Kiana says, a few thoughts I've had. This was written in August of this year. And one thought that really stood out, you don't drown in a teacup of discouragement when there are rivers of encouragement nearby. Ross mentioned that Kiana had a lot against her. She had a lot for her, but she had a lot against her. And I personally wouldn't have looked at Kiana's health situation and some other things in life. And I would have said, Kiana, all you've got is a little teacup of discouragement. It seemed like rivers of discouragement at times. But when she was close to her God and in touch with him, she looked at it as a teacup of discouragement. And she looked at it as a teacup of discouragement because she was tuned into the rivers, flowing rivers of encouragement from the heart of God, from the heart of Jesus. She loved that. And then another one is very simple. She just has, God is love. So I asked her, like that, it was up here on the slideshow when Ross mentioned it. If you could go anywhere, where would you go? And she mentioned she'd go to a convention. And then she had a couple other thoughts. And I forget exactly how she ended it, but I definitely spend it with someone. Definitely spend it with someone I love. And then they have there's another one. Maybe I should try to find that. Oh yeah. So this journal, they ask you a question. There's a pre-printed question, different pages, and then you write your response to it. And the question is, would you rather visit a library or a sports club? Neither. Why not a friend's house? Or Taco Bell? But why not a friend's house? And she does end up, I suppose if I had to choose, I'd pick the library because she's quiet. I would be too surprised there, but neither of those made sense to her. What made sense to her was to spend time with someone she loved. And that's, God is love. And she understood that. She saw people in need. And she realized that, loving God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and spirit, it's loving others. It's loving people. And Kiana, she just seemed to have that figured out so many times. It's about people. This is about loving. And so, if there's anything else from that letter. She's excited about nursing school. It just finished. You're such an encouragement to me. I'm glad to know you as a friend. So then there's a letter she wrote me. And this would have been in August as well, I guess. Mid-August she hand delivered it to me at Olympia Convention Grounds. I think a number of people knew that it was in Kiana's heart. It was her desire to have part in the ministry, but that wasn't possible. And she felt a definite calling from God towards that, and yet that wasn't possible. And well, I'll read this much. In a nutshell, I was confused. I had lots of questions and I didn't understand. I'm ashamed to admit it, but at first, after receiving the news, I was bitter. And I think Kiana would be okay with me sharing this if it could help anybody else in your own bitterness, your own struggle, your own confusion or doubts. I was bitter. That we didn't see that a whole lot, Kiana. And so with time, I began to realize that God oversees everything, and that I needed to learn a lot from this experience. I changed my focus off of others and onto myself. I pray that God will help me, help my spirit, help my heart, help me to have my spirit. I'm the one that needs to change. I need softened to see Jesus in me. That's powerful. It's beautiful. It's what we need. And she wrote me about, so far nursing has been a wide open door. I'm thrilled to start school in September, exclamation. And then she wrote just about a little struggle. And she finished her letter to me. I want to continue to pray about this struggle. I plan on pursuing nursing and giving it my very best. Whatever happens, I hope that I can be directed by the Lord and be willing for His will in my life, as I know His will is best. In the context of this letter, death wasn't part of the equation. There were other times, and her grandpa told us this morning about a time when that was very much God's will is best. I want to be willing for God's will, and His will is best, and death was definitely included in that. But here, I want to be willing for His will. She was talking about her future. And yet, in here, in one of her journal entries, how do you cope when things go wrong? I think is the question, something there. And she says, I try to keep up the eternal perspective. And if I can't keep an eternal perspective, I keep a future perspective. And it's not always automatic. It's never automatic. It's not always easy. But whatever happens, I hope that I can be directed by the Lord and be willing for His will in my life, as I know His will is best. So hard for us to accept that sometimes, but we do trust. We're really there's some things we're really gonna miss about her, and yet we comforted to know that, you know, like she said, she's not a body with a soul. She's a soul that had a body for a little while. And there was one other thing I wanted to mention that's totally gone, but maybe that's enough. It's a wonderful. We appreciate everyone coming. It means a lot. Yeah, my other thought is not coming back, so I think we'll just close with that hymn.
Number 254 in your handout. I love the perfect way.
family and friends. This does conclude the chapel service. At this point, we will excuse from the back for those that would like to come forward and pay their respects and greet the family. You're welcome to come forward. And so I will have Dean assist me with this, and he will start excusing people from the back row here in the main chapel, and we'll just slowly make our way up.